Christopher. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be alive and in the land of the living, like the song says, like Christine W. says, honey.
You're right. I like your outfit. I was
Uh,
wondering what to expect.
oh yeah, this was just my going to Publix outfit.
I
You
wouldn't
know.
doubt that. So how are you doing with this whole crisis thing and being quarantined at home?
Well, surprisingly enough, I'm actually doing quite well with it. I know a lot of people aren't, but I'm actually enjoying this little time away, this little break, this little pause. I think that for me, it was really well needed. Unlike a lot of performers and drag queens, I actually hate doing my makeup. I hate painting. I love spinning, obviously. I love spinning, but I'm really enjoying this time to reconnect with my family, my little fur babies, my home, nature, um, and kind of reconnecting spiritually with my higher power. I'm really enjoying it.
Well, I've seen what it takes for you to do your makeup and stuff. It's a couple hours of
Oh yeah,
of,
yeah. You would know.
of intense, just like, but it's always like super fierce when you're finished. So, um,
Poor Mel. I destroyed her bathroom at the Airbnb that we stayed at.
it was totally worth it. I got really good feed. I got to get like the best feedback though, so it was fine.
Oh,
So, so you were born in Trinidad, but you grew up in New York, and then you moved to Miami.
okay, so yes, I was born in Trinidad, but like basically, my mom just went to Trinidad to have me.
Mhm.
We were living in New York at the time, so after she had me in Trinidad and Tobago, we went back to New York. I lived in New York until I was 5. I lived in Brooklyn, Flatbush exact, and then we moved to Miami. And I grew up in Miami ever since. Went to school in Miami, made a name for myself in Miami. So yeah.
I know that the the name Power comes from, you were, I guess, kind of like a smaller build when you were growing up, and but you were very relentless, which we all know that about you.
Yeah,
Very, very outspoken, I could say.
you
Um,
done your homework. Power was my name Power was actually a nickname. It wasn't actually a stage name. It didn't start out as a stage name. It's been my nickname since I was 13
mhm.
because I was really small and skinny, but I used to fight a lot. I used to get into a lot of fist fights. And I always would win my fist fights. And so the kids at school used to call me Little Power because, I was kind of like a little bulldog when I got into a fight. So
And then the name Infinity. Where does that
and
come
then and then Infinity, well, I started out, I was one of 4 original leaders of the Florida ballroom scene. And I actually started out in a house that I had opened up called the House of Righteous Shade. And I closed that house after about, a couple years. And Jojo Ebony, um, who, he used to be Jojo Infinity, who opened up the entire ballroom scene when he came down from New York. Him and I became a lot closer after I had left my original house. And he used to work with me at Salvation a lot. And after we became friends, he convinced me to join the House of Infinity. And that was in 2000. And that was in 2000. So it's now 2020. I've been in Infinity for 20 years.
Wow. I know that I just got to meet Jojo. What a nice person.
Yes,
I've
he's
always been
quite.
I've always been in the circuit scene, and I could tell you the ins and outs of everything with that. But and now I'm like interested in the ballroom community, and so no other better people to introduce me to that than you. So
Yeah, well, Jojo is actually he's one of the few people that in the ballroom community that kind of transcends and crosses over from ballroom to circuit because Jojo has a big name in the ballroom scene, especially here in Florida, as the mother of the ballroom scene in Florida. But he also, he also was a circuit performer. He used to perform with me at Mark Baker's
Yeah,
parties at
I remember at Hard Rock.
right at Hard Rock, at Gay Disney. He used to perform at Salvation. He's done a lot with Jeffrey Sanker. He's performed, so he's done a lot of circuit events. So he's a circuit institution as well as a ballroom institution, and he's just very multi-talented.
Hmm. So you work in Tampa, well, before the quarantine, like on a regular basis, and you do your Queen of the Night.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I live in Tampa now, and even though I still travel for my bookings, Tampa is my new home base, and I created a talent competition called Queen of the Night. It's Tampa's longest running talent competition, and I had just figured after all my years in the industry, somebody gave me a chance, and it was time to pay it forward. So I started this talent competition, and I opened it to all types of talent. It didn't matter if you were drag queen, drag king, male entertainer, cis female, transgender. It didn't matter, straight. It didn't matter, as long as you can come and bring it. I attached challenges every single month. So every single month was a different challenge. And the contestants, all they had to do was adhere to that challenge, and the audience would choose the winners, but the performers were critiqued by a panel of judges. So it was kind of like, a drag version of America's Got American Idol.
Mhm.
And it really has launched a lot of drag careers in Central Florida. And this year we would be celebrating 8 years.
Oh wow, I know it's been going on a long time.
Yeah, yeah,
Pretty much since
it's
I've known of you. Of course, I've known you since you played for RC and Will, or RC in Atlanta back in the day. I still have the flyer, and it's a stiletto high heel, like a high heel and you were going to play at the Woodrum Arts Center. You know
uh-huh.
that?
Yes. Oh my goodness, I didn't know. Oftentimes, my history with people starts at a different place in my timeline than theirs does with me.
Yeah,
Like
mine's
I remember meeting somebody at this place, and usually they'll say, "Well, I actually remember you from."
right. That's pretty cool.
Uh,
So what are your plans? Do you have any new projects that are coming up, as far as, well, like, despite the quarantine, but anything new that you're working on, or are you just
well, so we had just, right now I'm part of a talk show. It's called It's Happening Out, and
Mhm.
it is kind of like The View except gay, and it has turned out to be the world's biggest and number one gay TV talk show, and it's a whole network. It's called Happening Out Network, and they do a news show called Q News. They have Happening Out, which is where I'm on, where we have a panel of us from different sectors of the gay community that come together. We have a lesbian, we have a leather boy, we have, of course, the token Black beauty. Um, we have a transgender, performer and activist, two of them on the show. Um, and we have a moderator, and we discuss issues. And that's been going on for this year will be 2 years. And I'm really, really proud of that, because it really lends a voice to our community. It lends a voice to people in our community. And it's fun and interesting to discuss, have discourse, engage with each other on different topics that affect our community. And then on top of that, I had just started a new deal with the Hard Rock. Actually, speaking of the Hard Rock, comes full circle. I had just started a new deal with the Hard Rock, where myself and some other fab entertainers had just premiered a new brunch. Now, brunches are really all the rage right now. Actually, brunches seem to do a lot better than a lot of the nighttime events
Mhm.
because they really attract that mainstream audience. And every single brunch, you can have a different audience, and so you have this mainstream built-in audience that really is profitable for whatever venue is throwing it. But when it comes to venues, you can't get any better unless we're actually in Las Vegas
Right.
than the Hard Rock. The Hard Rock is a casino, it's a hotel, it's an entertainment complex, and so that's a lot of built-in traffic, built-in audience,
Trying to picture
built-in.
that in my head. It sounds pretty fabulous.
Yeah, I mean, and so we had just after Winter Party weekend with you, we had just premiered our first Hard Rock event, and I DJ and perform. So I get to wear both my hats, and it was sold out days before, and we had already set a date for the next one, and then the Rona hit, and now here we are.
Mm. So you planning on picking back up on that whenever we're able to?
Oh yeah, yeah. I can't wait.
Well, I can't wait either now.
Yeah,
I'm definitely going to be
that's
there. Um, do you have any advice on the younger generations that that want to be drag queens, or they're scared to, how do I say, have the courage to come out? Like my son is going through this phase of wanting to wear makeup, and he's
Oh.
scared of what people are going to think. And I'm just like, it doesn't matter what people think, as long as your mama's okay with it, it's fine. you know um, do you have any words of encouragement on the younger generation that are going through this, like, I don't know if with Landon, if he's just artsy and creative, or what it is, but you know have do you have any words of advice for those?
Well, yes. First of all, now is the best time ever to explore yourself and explore all your creative outlets. And when it comes to drag, I mean, what a time that we live in. Before, when you wanted to do drag, um, or just be an out and open gay man, and be flamboyant and colorful about it, it was something that was not frowned, that was not looked upon very, very highly. It was frowned upon, both in the mainstream world and in our own community. A lot of times you can get backlash by gays themselves because gay men are feminine, or because there is this idea that if you do drag, you are less than. You're not as manly as, you know, um, somebody that goes to the gym. You're not as manly as a DJ or a bartender. That's not true. Drag is an art. It is, for a lot of people, it might be who they are. But for a lot of us, it's not only who we are, but what we do. And you're certainly able, and you're certainly capable of separating who you are as a gay man from who you are on stage. And right now, because drag has gone so mainstream, what with RuPaul's Drag Race, what with Pose, what with all the celebration that we're seeing in the world for drag queens, somebody that wants to do drag does not have to ever feel alone. They can always feel empowered. They can always feel emboldened, because right now, drag is all the rage. It's actually the in thing to do drag. And you see a lot of drag queens that are fierce on stage, and then you see them as boys and they're hot as fuck.
Mhm.
So, it really lends and breaks that stereotype that, okay, well, if you do drag, you are not as good as, not as manly as, not as fierce as, or less than anybody else. Right now, drag is being celebrated. So you tell Landon to jump on that bandwagon and be part of that celebration.
Yeah, I've encouraged him. Just he loves James Charles. And he's fascinated with how he does makeup. So I got him a James Charles palette. And he'll
Uh,
do my makeup and I do his. And when he has the makeup on, like, he's like, it's almost like another child. Like, he's very happy, and you know, he wants his hair curled back, and he's growing his hair out long. And what's crazy is I've never mentioned anything to him about working in the gay community, or, you know, I don't push that issue to him. It's kind of like separated. So it just proves to you that, like, you know, if he is gonna, you know, if he is gay or transgender, or if it's just something artsy or and creative, he was born that way, because
Yes.
he's very kind of, he lives a pretty sheltered life between me and my mom in a country town. So it's not like he sees this on TV. It's he in his own mind. So to me, that really, like, is proof that, you know, it's, you're born like that guy. If you want to do that, that's, you know, that's natural.
He you know, I think that, and I hope he watches this, because I'm about to tell a little story here. Um, for boys like him, for children like him, that even have a hesitancy or a trepidation for being who they are and living in their own skin. Interesting to note that those of us that came before, um, we didn't have it so easy. I remember when I was growing up, I had a real struggle with, forget about drag. I mean, forget about even doing drag, just being gay. I had a struggle with that my entire life growing up until I was 20 years old. Nowadays, you know, people are free, gay, and happy at like 12, if not even, you know, earlier. But at the time when I was growing up, it was such a thing of shame. And I used to try to force myself to like girls. And I thought that I used to think that I would outgrow my attraction to boys. And I knew that I was attracted to boys from the age of like 6. I mean, I remember looking at comic books and seeing Superman and the way he was drawn with all his muscles and his sinewy definition, and being attracted to him at 6. And growing up, I used to say, well, when I get older, I will start to like girls. I'll outgrow this.
Mm-hmm.
And the older I got, the more I realized that wasn't happening. So I grew into my teens, it didn't happen. I had some girlfriends, and even making out with them was just, ugh, it just was not, you know, it just felt so unnatural. And I remember one night crying myself to sleep, and I was praying, and I prayed that night that God will take this away, that I will one day be normal. And I remember falling asleep, praying and crying. And the last thing I remember before I fell asleep was turning over on my side on the pillow. And the last thing I remember saying was, God, please let this not be so. And I remember a tear falling down the side of my face. And then I fell asleep. So that's the last thing I remember. And I'll never forget that night, that last, God, let this not be so, and that tear falling down my face. Now, the fact that as a teenager, I would cry myself to sleep because I didn't want to be me, really, really shines a light on the fact that a lot of us struggled. And I used to do shows in my room. I mean, this was before I knew what gay was. This is before I knew what drag was. This was, of course, before I knew what a club was, or we didn't have any RuPaul Drag Race. I used to come home and perform in front of my room. So I was always a performer, you know, but I could not even explore that because I couldn't even face the fact that I was different or that I was gay.
Mm-hmm.
And now, children like your son Landon and other kids around the world, they see such an explosion of color and diversity and difference, and it's being accepted, and they don't have to go through that. So when you compare what we had to go through versus what he has now, he should really pick that apple and just enjoy it all the way.
Well, the problem is that my mom keeps him a lot, and my mom is very prejudiced. I mean, she's against, you know, she's very Southern, very like traditional from back in the day, born in Alabama. Like, you know, everything is got to be spiteful and, you know, negative. So she
Yeah,
gives him a really hard time about it, to where he's, you know,
yeah,
when he's with me, he's like, oh, if I go to grandma's, I can't put on any makeup because if she sees it where it was like washed off, I'll be in trouble. So I have said in front of him to her, like she'll say, well, if he comes back here, don't bring him back here wearing any makeup. And I just look at him and I'm like, okay, well, if we do our makeup, we'll just be sure we'll wash it off real good this time.
Yeah, but there's a big difference between knowing that it's all right to do it and it's all right to be him, just not all right in this place,
Yes.
and thinking that it's not all right, period.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference between that. And so as long as he has at least you as a support system and other people as a support system, clearly he's learning a very important lesson in life right now, which is there's a time and place.
Yeah,
So
that's what I told him.
under grandma's roof, that's not the time and place, but at least he knows that he still can be, it's just not there.
Yeah,
You know.
that's true. Well, I know one of the things that always I think has connected you and I was Hilton, your relationship with Hilton, working with him from Salvation back in the day, and then me working with him basically since 2009. And so I think that's one thing that's always kept us connected. Back in the Salvation, how did you start working with him in Salvation?
It's funny that you bring him up. Him and I just had a key and cackle session today, FaceTime for my birthday.
Nice.
Which if Hilton's watching this, his birthday was 5 days ago. So happy birthday to you, Hilton, as well. Well, I actually, I was really lucky. It's one of those situations where I was in the right place at the right time. Up until 1997, I had been struggling to make it and to really break through as a performance artist. I was working at a place called Groovejet. On a weekly basis, it was mostly a straight crowd, but I really loved it. And I used to go out every single night, get my face in front of every single camera, to get on every single box, get on every single stage. I mean, I used to go dance in club kid gear with like boots that were like this big, and I would do anything to get noticed. And one day I performed for free at a restaurant called Lucky Chang's. Way back in the day, on South Beach, there was a restaurant called Lucky Chang's, which was a drag restaurant. Drag queens used to serve you, used to be your waiters. And so they would, on the weekends, they would allow some of the drag queens that didn't work there on a regular basis to come in and give a free show just for tips. And myself and some of my roommates, which were other drag queens, because back in those days, us girls lived like 3-4 to an apartment. So me and some of my friends and my roommates, we went to a Lucky Chang's, we performed, we'd get our tips, and then that was our money for the weekend to like spend our spending money for the club. And I did this show and choreographed this show. It was Whitney Houston's Step by Step. And I believe that somebody saw it. I believe it was Nathan Judd had seen it or heard about it. And he was at the time the general manager for Salvation. And he called me to his house for a meeting and asked me, can I do that show again on a bigger stage at Salvation? Which I was like floored, I was floored. That's like being an actor and going out for roles all the time and trying to make it, and then being discovered, by, Steven Spielberg and him saying, would you like to be in my film? I mean, it was that exciting to me.
Well, Salvation back then had y'all have 2,000 people on the weekend, just on a
Yes,
regular Saturday night, right?
Yeah, we used to call it the world's only weekly circuit party because that's what it was. That's what it felt like. It was every single week. And I mean, you had the in-house talents of myself and Kitty Meow and Abel and Lights by Antonio was Antonio Lahi and Ross Berger. So we had it was a whole bunch of talents that was under one roof weekly. And Nathan asked me to perform, and I got all my friends together. I asked them, please help me out. JoJo was in that show. my friend Leslie Quick, my roommate Leslie Quick, my roommates, and some dancers. I didn't have money, I didn't have a budget, but I just knew this was my big chance, and I called in every favor. And that was the first time that the audience got to see me. And when Abel mixed into that track, Whitney Houston, the Junior Vasquez mix of Whitney Houston, Step by Step, I walked out onto that stage with two huge Afro puffs, and we turned it. And it's like you try and try and try and try for years to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about when you make it is, when it happens for you, everything from that point happens really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So like I had been trying to make it since 1993. In 1997, when that night happened, after that night, from now, seems like just yesterday. Everything happened really fast. So that night, everything took off for me. I was the talk of the town. Everybody was asking, who is this power? At the time, I was in Infiniti, so everybody was asking, who is this power? Everybody was talking about me. And they then called me back a couple weeks later and said that they would like me to be the in-house resident performer. And at the time, us girls were getting like, the average pay was like $75. And they told me your pay is gonna be $300, which for me is like, 300 then was like you hiring me at your club and telling me you're gonna pay me like 5,000 every week now. Like I was like, oh my God, you know.
Yeah.
So I really, you know, I was just so excited, and it was like the best days of my life. And after a while, Mike Mazer, who owned the club, sold it, and he sold it to two new owners. But one of the investors and part owner was Hilton. So now enters Hilton into my life. And Hilton was always, always kind. He was always so considerate. He was always so thoughtful. He was always above the fray.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked really, really well together. And after Salvation closed, Hilton was the only one that had the forethought to kind of brand it and really keep that name and that legacy going. And because of that, that really created a lot of the events that Hilton, myself, and Abel did together.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even to this day, we used to do events every single month, because we used to do Salvation at Large parties every month at SCORE. I don't know if they still do that on a regular basis. I used to come down every single month. I stopped coming down after a while, but Hilton and I will still work together every so often. And it's just such a good feeling, especially when it's myself, Hilton, and Abel, because that's like the trifecta, you know, it's really hot.
I know he's always said like you're one of his favorite performers, you know, ever since I've known him. And he hasn't changed a bit. The way he was with you is the way he's always been with me and everybody else, you know. He's always been above all the politics and all that, you know. And
yeah, I mean, I'm very protective over him and you know, Kitty and Abel, and, well, just our whole little family from Salvation. And you know, there have been times where people have come for Hilton, and he knows. All right, let's just reveal something that probably needs no revealing. I'm a bitch. if people didn't know that,
what's necessary.
Everybody knows my tongue. Everybody knows my mouth. I can be a scandal, and I give zero fucks. But I'm very protective over Hilton. So I don't like when you know, in the past people have come for him, because Hilton is a very gentle soul, and he's very much above the fray, and he's somebody that's not deserving of any type of meanness or unkindness. So I get very claws out when it comes to him, especially somebody that would rather kind of rise above it. You know, you rise above it, I'll get down in the dirt and fight.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. It's always an honor just to have you in my presence.
Oh, yes, you too, honey. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and hopefully we'll be able to connect soon and do that hard rock thing. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I love being able to spin as well as perform. I'm probably one of the only DJs that can serve you both at one time. And I can tell you, not a lot of y'all bitches can say that. Other DJs,
Okay. Boop, boop.
y'all can say that, honey. But
Oh,
yeah, it's always a good time when I get to be a hybrid, be part of both worlds at one time. So
tell us too where we could see the happening out, where we can see that your show, your the talk show.
So yeah, so it's happening out. Airs on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find us on Facebook. On It's Happening Out. It airs live on Facebook. You can also find it on YouTube as well as Instagram and Twitter. So check us out every single Wednesday. We are always talking about the issues that affect our community, our world at large, and you as individually, and see what we have to say. And you're able to actually see me say the things that I would say on social media anyways, just live and in effect.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Mel.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.